K-12 Education Budget Committee today. And committee, first item on our agenda is to consider previously heard bills. And so we're going to take a look at House Bill 2521. And committee, what is your will on House Bill 2521? Representative Getz.
Make a motion that we pass out favorably 2521.
Do we have a second? We have a second from Representative Scott Hill. And now let's go ahead and discuss the bill. Representative McDonald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did we not pass this out February 20th?
No. 2521?
Yes.
We passed it out?
We did.
Oh, it got referred back. Yeah, I was like, what the heck? Yeah, yes. So we are actually going to amend it and pass it back out. So that's what we're going to be doing. Thank you, Representative. Forgotten all that we threw it out there and then we brought it back. Representative Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment to add to this bill so we get it out there. Do you have Nick? Okay. Okay.
That's good. Here they come.
We're okay with that.
We did good yesterday. Thank you.
Yep. Just that field of study got added to it.
How does that, so I wouldn't have done that since we passed it out? Like, we would still need to do
We
it?
still need to pass it out.
Yeah, because it got referred.
Right. We still need to pass it out again.
Yeah.
Welcome to the room.
I asked for it.
Now you'll get to rewrite it.
You're not as funny as you think you are.
We, no, that was the one that you told me not to write a bill brief for.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Representative Hill, would you like to explain your amendment, or we could have Nick do so? Your choice or combination?
Go ahead, Nick, and I'll fill in the blank.
Perfect.
Right.
This is a happy group today.
It is.
So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, what this amendment would do is it would, as the bill is currently drafted, it requires any teacher, or I guess any person who completes an alternative teacher certification program to apply for and obtain an initial teaching license under this section. What the amendment would do is it would provide that that person would be authorized to apply for and obtain a restricted teaching license, and it would change all the references to an initial teaching license to a restricted teaching license. I will note in this amendment also, it does make a change to state and clarify that when the person who's applying for the restricted teaching license is submitting their transcript confirming that they've been granted a bachelor's degree or higher, that bachelor's degree or higher can be in any field of study, not necessarily related to the subject matter with which that person would be teaching in. The amendment does require that the person to submit proof of completion of the alternative teacher certification program and a passing score on a subject area examination approved by the State Board of Education or a praxis test. And then lastly, as part of the application process, the person who's applying for this restricted teaching license would have to comply with any other requirements that are established by the State Board of Education that are compatible to other licensure requirements established by the State Board of Education. On the back page, that was all on the front page, so on the back page, what the amendment does is it states that, again, as is required under this currently drafted bill, that the person who's applying and obtaining a restricted teaching license has to complete 2 years of a teacher mentorship program when the first 2 years they are employed by a school district. And then as part of that teacher mentorship program, the school district board of education, who's overseeing that teacher, shall submit a progress report each year to the state board of education to verify that the individual has made appropriate progress toward full licensure. And then if appropriate progress has been made toward full licensure, at the end of that 2-year mentorship, an individual who holds that restricted teaching license can then apply for and may obtain a full Kansas teaching license. And this does continue that provision in the current bill, that individual then must be treated in the same manner as an individual who completes a traditional teacher preparation program. If appropriate progress is not made toward full licensure by that individual, the state board can then cancel the restricted license. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair and Committee.
All right, well, let's go ahead and open with your motion, Representative Hill, a second, and then you can add to explain your language and discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do move the amendment, or I make the amendment that make the motion that we accept this amendment. And I want to talk just a little bit about it because this thing starts to look like a scratch pad by the time. So there's been a lot of negotiations on it to get this to be a workable policy.
Hold on one second. Let's get a second, and then let's continue with you. Do we have a second? Second with Representative Getz. Continue.
But I think we have worked really hard to get some local control involved in this. We've worked really hard to get some state board oversight in this. And I think, you know, if we don't work to get an increased number of alternative certification programs in place, we don't have ability to fill all the teaching positions in the state. And so I mean, is this the first choice that a superintendent should go for? Probably not. Probably the first choice should be to hire people out of a traditional education source. But I will give the instance of my own local school district. Last year they made, I think it was 15 new hires. Not a single one of those new hires came from a traditional education. They are all coming in through alternative. They are people that have been out in the workforce, have moved into teaching and come back. So this is really trying to address some of the needs that we have out there. And with that, I will be happy to answer questions on it.
All right, so committee, we're going to go ahead and open up for discussion on the amendment. While you're thinking about what questions or comments you'd like to make, I will ask KSD, one of our requests related to this was, were you able to get survey information back from our local school districts of the number of unlicensed teachers that are currently teaching? That was something, you haven't? Do you remember that being the request and Frank saying he'd have that back to us in March? Yeah, I think that was because when we were hearing this bill the first time, I made the inquiry of how many teachers do we have currently that don't have a license? And I gave the example of my good friend who is an occupational therapist teaching high school English, and doing a fabulous job, by the way. But she is not licensed, nor does she plan to be. So if we could get that, that actually would be very relevant to this bill. And I think Frank said he was working on it and that we might be able to get something back in March, unless I misremembered. All right, comments, questions on the amendment? Representative Johnson.
Thank you. I guess that one section, starting on line 31, elementary ed, unified English language arts, government social studies, math. I understand all those. I don't see anything listing arts, music, physical education. Is there a reason that those aren't considered?
I can address part of that. The one part I don't know is the elementary education unified. I'm not familiar with that, but maybe you are.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
You are, and what is that?
there are standards of communication and development that you learn. There are skills in the teaching area. It's described in the state board
Okay, so,
procedures, and it's a good methodology, but it's a second, overall, as I understand it.
okay, so not really, still not really sure what that is, but in terms of the others, I think that the alternative licensure is meant to help those receive some basic pedagogy on and content area for those areas, but music would be very hard to do. You could get the pedagogy perhaps, but you wouldn't be able to, unless you were in person. Some of those things are better. This is online. This is an online type of alternative licensure program. You can be a teacher right now and get the counseling degree online. You can get all of that online. I can get all my licensure online. I do that every 5 years personally. But some of these things for the first time, I think that may be why they're not there. If the list could be expanded, there's Representative Hill.
Well, Representative Johnson, I think we're just mimicking what is currently there for alternative certification. And I don't know, like music teachers and art teachers right now, if they have a pathway currently through the department to do alternative. But this is just taking the language that's already there. So, I mean, we could add to that probably.
Nick, you want to answer that a little bit more? Because these aren't things that were statutory requirements. They were alternative licensure guideline requirements.
So, Madam Chair and committee members, I believe this list, as it was originally introduced in this bill, was from the ABCTE program, and then the amendment that you all adopted on this to modify that was essentially to make that list in conformance with what current state board regulations are. And so I think all these subject matters are listed in state board regulations as you see here.
Okay, and that's great because trying to make them more congruent, more parallel, I think that was one of the reasons it came back. Well, I know it's one of the reasons. Representative McDonald.
Just a couple things. A point of clarification, there's still no student teaching requirement for this particular path that we're talking about, correct?
It requires the 2-year mentor program, which is parallel with the alternative licensure. They actually get to go into a building, start teaching, and they do not have student teaching experience either. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that is the way that it is. So it's really, again, trying to parallel what already exists and just a separate but similar pathway.
I just think mentorship is not a substitute for student teaching or practicum. I mean, it's better than the nothing, I guess, but I feel like we're continually lowering our acceptable standards, and so I kind of have a problem with that.
Well, let's explore that for one moment. And we do have State Board member Dina here. She may be able to answer it, or Gabrielle may be able to answer that, or John as well, just for clarity, because I believe the alternative licensure, do they have a mentor? But they don't have, or is it called a practicum? But nobody's standing side by side, these individuals all day long, like a student teacher might have a teacher with them. So Dina, would you like to answer, or would John or Gabrielle? Dina's going to answer.
There we go. I'll give it a try. The apprenticeship is done that way. So it kind of aligns itself with the apprenticeship that was passed, I believe, last year. So if you're an apprentice, you get the opportunity to work while you're learning. So and I think all the pathways have that kind of a connection. So this isn't unusual, that a lot of them with the pathway have been paras or something of a job of that sort, who have either gone to the apprenticeship route or gone through a pathway. So it's, it's alternative. So
It sounds,
it may not always be the best path, but it works. And teachers have people become really good teachers under that process, so.
so you're supportive of alternative pathways?
So, yes, I support the alternative pathways.
Okay, very good, thank you. And I'll just note, I just pulled it up on my phone here. It says, and this is the restricted alternative teaching license pathway for Kansas. It says this pathway provides an opportunity for those individuals to have immediate access to start teaching under restricted licensure while completing professional education pedagogy, which is the courses that we're talking about as well. They're pedagogy courses to become fully licensed. So,
Just to clarify.
Yes, Representative
I'm not
McDonald.
opposed- Thank you. I'm not opposed to finding alternative certification or the ones we even have. I feel like a lot of this is kind of usurping the authority of the Board of Ed. And again, mentorship is fine and standard. But in college, when we go to an education program, there's a lot that you learn in the classroom under the supervision of an instructor or a teacher, from classroom management, and beyond. So I appreciate that that we're trying to get creative. I appreciate that it's hard to find qualified people. I just think at the end of the day, we're really trying to meet kids where they're at. And I want to set up teachers for success and students for success. And so if we could have some requirement beyond mentorship, something where they had practical experience in a classroom under supervision, I would be more comfortable with it. But as it's written, I'm not able to support it. Thank you.
Well, I would just note, Representative, that it wouldn't be alternative if it did, because we just heard Dina Horst, State Board member, say that this is in line with other alternative programs are. I'm reading it right off the website. It does not require any previous experience. It allows them to immediately begin instruction. And I would feel really bad for the school districts that have, for example, my friend teaching, they would have an entire classroom without anyone. And we don't know how many hundreds of unlicensed teachers are currently in the state of Kansas. And in fact, I'm not sure what the latest numbers are of unfilled licensed positions. That would be interesting to note, because they may be filled with temporary substitute teachers, long-term subs that are not licensed, but it's certainly not licensed in their content area. So I think this is absolutely wonderful and shows harmony between the legislature and the State Board of Education.
I guess just
Representative McDonald.
Thank you. Just one follow-up question. Does the state board have authority to do this if they want to, or do we have to give them that authority? I mean, if they're a self-governing board, help me understand the need for us to be involved. Thank you.
Well, the legislature does we're the only ones that have authority to pass legislation that deems for the improvement or takes care for the improvement of the education for public schools and associated activities. It is our constitutional role. The only opinions that we've read have said if we get into areas such as this, then it should be in harmony. And I believe that looking at this, it is in harmony with it. Certainly, the State Board of Education has alternative pathways. This just goes hand in hand with it. And I would think we would all want to work together to make the very most of every opportunity. It may not be an opportunity that they had considered, but it doesn't make it not a valid opportunity. And I really think the legislature, it's our responsibility. Ultimately, we are the ones responsible for the education of 460,000 students. One more comment, Representative McDonald, and maybe.
Clarity, do they currently have the authority to do this on their own if they chose to? I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, they have the authority, just like Keisha has the authority to allow virtual students to participate, but they don't. So right now, this is not something that the state board has taken up. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't. It doesn't mean that they would be opposed to it. But I think what I'm hearing today is that it's much more compatible and parallel with what they currently are doing than what was originally brought forth and introduced.
Thank you.
Representative Poskett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification, to move from a restricted license to a full license, they have to have the 2-year mentorship. What if they work for one school district 1 year and move to a different school district the next year? Do they have to start over and do 2 years with the same district?
So
I just want to make sure.
So the bill does not specify that that's required. Instead, it says that submit a progress report each year to the State Board of Education on a form and in a manner required by the state board. So the state board would have the ability to say it needs to be continuous, but since we did not say that, that would probably be them overstepping what we said here. So basically, they could create a manner in which they could allow one or another or not.
I just want to make sure we were clear.
Well, I think the bill allows the State Board of Education to make those decisions. Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, you may close on your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Close on the amendment.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded and closed on for House Bill 2521. All those in favor of the Hill Amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. And looks like the motion carries. We are back on the base bill 2521. Any other amendments? No other amendments. All right, then Representative Getz, you may close on your original motion.
I move that we pass out 2521, House Bill 2521 as amended.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded to pass out House Bill 2521 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Committee, we have now effectively passed out House Bill 2521 twice, and we will send it to the House floor for consideration. All right, committee, we're going to just take a few minutes because in preparation for building our budget and policy package, we hope to do that on Monday. If you know of a conflict for Monday, please talk to your minority leader or speaker and we'll get you substituted. But this is your opportunity. We have John and Gabrielle here today and you can ask questions. No questions? All right, well, I will. Who wants to come up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. John Hess, Director of Fiscal Services for the State Department of Education.
All right, thank you, John. Okay, so my question is about the memo that was provided on February 21st relating to E-rate. Our question's about the E-rate. So there are funds left in the E-rate, and I know that from what I'm reading, if I'm understanding correctly, that you've requested from Department of Recovery that those funds be allowed to be expended until the end of December. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, yes, we are in the process of getting a extension on our MOU with the Recovery Office through the end of December 2024.
How many districts are pending for funding?
So the number of school districts that as of last week had submitted applications in the 2024 window was 3, but the application window is open until March 27th. So in prior experience, several school districts tend to submit those applications during the last couple weeks of the application window, so we will not know how many school districts applied until the end of the month.
Okay, so it looks like how much total? At 400,000, how much total do we have in the fund? 495,000?
Madam Chair, that is the amount that we have expended and obligated at this point. There is a balance of a little over $3.5 million. Since the ARPA state fiscal recovery funds have to be obligated by the end of December, so they have to have some purpose. We have to send out the grant award notifications for these funds by the end of December, so they can't be used for like the 2025 application window. I would be blown away if we used all $3.5 million of that. So we are in the process with the recovery office so that they can take that extra money that we will not use and reallocate it towards something else in the process of having them recoup some of that money and still leave enough to cover what we anticipate to be the amounts. As was in that memo, it was only about $50,000 in approved match for applications that were submitted during the 2023 application window. So it really depends, but in the years that we've done this, including the last iteration when it was under the state general fund, we rarely, if ever, had about $500,000 is the highest it's been in a single year.
Okay, so just for clarity, this is ARPA money, not related to ESSER money at all. It's ARPA, it's given to the state, then the state determines where it wants to delegate, or, put those funds. It gave 3.5 or more million, and we just haven't used them.
Madam Chair, yes, it is. It was awarded to KSDE under the SPARK process through the SPARK Executive Committee. It was $4 million was awarded in, I believe it was December of 2021. It has supported applications for E-rate and the 10% match during the 2022 application window, the 2023 application window, and we have managed to find a way to support it in the 2024 application window as well. So we have funded all of the school districts that have applied or we will be able to fund the ones that are in the process of applying, but it is up to school districts.
So since it's ARPA money, there's a wide range of uses it could be used for if it were to go back to the Department of Recovery, correct?
Madam Chair, I believe so. I'm not familiar with all of the allowable uses.
So if this committee so desired, it would be possible for us to perhaps consider a way to use this additional money that wasn't used. If, let's say we saved $500,000, we saved that for any potential grants that went through, you would still have $3 million left. Couldn't that be used for special education, for example?
Madam Chair, we are bound by the terms of our memorandum of understanding with the Recovery Office and what the SPARK Executive Committee approved. So under the current agreement, we are only allowed to use the funds for the E-rate match.
So it would have to be a request with the Department of Recovery?
I'm not exactly sure the entire process. We have had other instances where we signed MOUs for other issues because the legislature directed the use of the ARPA state fiscal recovery funds. For example, last fiscal year, it supported the first year of the virtual math education contract, and it also supported $1 million in school safety and security grants. So we used it for those purposes, but those were also directed by the 2022 legislature.
Would you send us the memorandum of understanding so we could look at that?
I will make sure that I'm allowed to share that with the Recovery Office, and then I can send it to the committee.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything about the budget questions? Representative Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. A question on the virtual assessment request. Where are we at on that thing? Is the department still requesting that, or have they revised that, or where are we at?
Madam Chair, Representative, the State Department is still supportive of the governor's recommendation to include that funding in our budget.
Did I remember right on that? The state board really had not taken a position on that, but the department did. Is that kind of where we were at?
Madam Chair, Representative, the state board voted on had a 5-4 vote for it in July, but because it didn't get 6 votes, we couldn't make it an official enhancement request. So what we did is we put it in our budget narrative as the experts at the State Department of Education think this is a worthwhile thing to consider and would ask the governor and legislature to think about, but it was not an official enhancement request in our budget.
Thank you.
I just find it kind of interesting that your recommendation was opposite of what the State Board of Education recommended, which through a vote, they did not recommend it. So it's just interesting. Any other questions? It's a big budget. Representative Estes.
I thank Representative Hill for opening this line of question because it reminds me that I asked to find out what happens when a question is compromised, and I never did receive that information. Do you know what happens when a question is compromised?
Madam Chair, Representative, a follow-up memo that the KSDE sent on February 19th. It was part of the packet with our testimony for the state aid portion of the budget. So what happens is reported security breaches are investigated by KU, and actions are determined based on the severity of the breach. Most breaches are a result of adult behavior, not student behavior. Superintendents are notified directly by KU. KSDE does not get in between that. When a breach is reported in the school district, and it has not been the policy of KSD or KU to make public any additional information regarding breaches. So that was what was included in our memo.
Madam Chair, may I? Okay, so that didn't really answer my question, though. So maybe I need to have a foundational question. Has a question ever been eliminated and removed from the test due to being compromised?
Madam Chair, and I apologize, Representative, I've slept since then, so I'm trying to remember the conversations I had internally. I believe I asked that question, and the answer I got was that we just don't kind of make that information public in order to not have additional security concerns. But I mean, I can follow up again with our assessment people within the agency.
Okay, and I'm asking a generalized question. I don't need to know, well, this instance happened this time, but I liked what I'm really asking, and I still feel like I don't have the answer, is if there is a compromise and you feel like, okay, enough people know about this question, we can't use this question, is another one substituted? Is it dropped? And that the answer that we got in that report really didn't answer what I was asking.
Madam Chair, Representative, I apologize. That is to the best of my knowledge, and I will double check with our assessment staff, if there are issues where they have concerns about the security and validity of a question, it is taken off the assessment and replaced with a question that measures the same item or part of the standards, but I can double check specifically with our assessment staff.
Okay, thank you. That's the type of answer I was looking for. I appreciate it.
Okay, so another question, it was brought up, and it was about those 9.6 FTE positions, and it was told to our committee that the majority of those were federal funds because the department got, I think, around $27 million between the last time we were here and currently. And, as I'm looking at this, I see 2 positions that are SGF. One is Office of DFAS Deputy Commissioner for $72,292. SGF, and then an IT position of $54,269. So talk a little bit about those positions, and now those were adjusted FTE, correct? So that those were not approved by the legislature, correct?
Madam Chair, the funding for those positions were approved by the State Board of Education, which has its appointing authority, and the funding for those was found by holding other positions open. So it was determined that we needed to spend money for these two positions. So to do so, we had to hold other positions open in order to shift the funding. So we did that because it is easier, just mechanically, to sometimes create a new position instead of repurposing positions because of the complications where the vacancies are located and where we need to create the new position.
Okay, so just to be certain, you found $126,000 in your budget and created these two positions and didn't fill two others, let's say.
Madam Chair, depending on where it was, I can't say it's a one-for-one, but we had to move funding from other positions to these positions, yes.
All right. Any other questions? Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hess. On the first line of questioning, using the ARPA funds for potential special education, if memory serves me correctly, the last time the legislature funded to the 92% was 2010 through 2011, and there was some federal money used to get us to that percentage of excess cost then. And if I recall correctly, didn't the federal government send us a letter stating that we should not be using those funds for special education purposes?
Madam Chair, Representative, I would have to go back in our records and see about that. I do know we had, around that time, the state had issues with, had to get a waiver for the IDEA, Maintenance of Financial Support, or the MOE for that, because there was a cut in the SGF appropriation for special education state aid during that time frame. I'm not sure about the use of the ARA money from the Great Recession. On that, I would have to double check.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't know, Nick, if you had anything to add to that. I don't have my history of special education memo that you had given to us, or I could have referred, hopefully a little more accurate.
I don't have anything to add.
And I would just note that when there's been special education monies that the state board have allocated to special education during these last 3 pandemic years, we've subtracted that from the federal money. So for example, if they gave $130 million, that was subtracted in order to compute excess costs, just like it would be if the federal government did what they're supposed to do and gave us $430 million. Since they're shorting us $300 million every year, we would be able to deduct that. We do have to maintain our maintenance of effort, but those are federal dollars. So that is part of the formula for computing excess cost. All right, committee, if there are no other discussion items, then we'll go ahead and adjourn, and I will see you Monday. And I do not plan to call another meeting this week, but if we do, you'll be the first to know. All right, have a good night.